Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, retirement specialist, and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
For the past few weeks, and concluding with this week's show, we have covered what I referred to as the 4 pillars to a perfect retirement plan. And today, we find ourselves on pillar number 4, facilitate. So before we dive into how we at Tony Walker Financial can facilitate a worry-free retirement for literally thousands of savers, let's first define what facilitate means. According to Webster's, the description I like best is as follows: to make something easier, to help something run easier and effectively. In our world, we might use an example of facilitating by helping savers pay less in taxes on their 401k by facilitating the strategic withdrawals from it. Another example of our work in the process of facilitation would be the transfer or rollover of funds from a 401k or other brokerage company to the companies we use at Tony Walker Financial. As you're about to learn, there are many other examples of how a retirement planning firm such as ours can facilitate many other facets of a saver's life when they are faced with the many changes that will come their way in retirement. So what are the things you might need help with in facilitating your money, and how best to create that perfect retirement plan for you? Well, I'm glad you asked. Well, welcome, folks, to the Worry-Free Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, facilitating specialist and full-time fiduciary, Tony Walker. And before we share with you the many ways we facilitate the transition from work to retirement, let me introduce 2 young lads who are always ready to facilitate the workings of this show each week. America's favorite financial sidekick, Mr. Aaron Orender, along with Louisville, Kentucky's most laid-back graphics artist, Mr. Derek Hudson. Okay, let's say you just happen to be one of the many savers out there who either 1, being offered a buyout from your current company, or 2, recently accepted a buyout. How about this? You're that person who is looking to retire in the very near future, or maybe you're that person who has been retired for years and worried that those golden years, as they call it, are turning out not to be so golden after all. Who in the world are you likely to hand over your life savings in hopes that they can create a retirement plan that includes the 4 pillars we have discussed, as well as be there for the long haul to assist you with all of the changes that are going to come your way in retirement? Besides the 3 pillars to a perfect retirement plan already discussed on this show, the 4th and final pillar, facilitate, to me, is the most important role an advisor can play in your retirement. Which is why, when I return, we're going to have some special guests in the studio to help share how Tony Walker Financial is so effective in facilitating the plans of all of the clients we serve into that worry-free retirement. So stay tuned. I am Tony Walker, and we will be right back. Who can you trust? It's one of the most important decisions you'll have to make. Question is, are you ready? Well, we're here to help at Tony Walker Financial. You know, we care more about you than we do your money, and we have over 3,500 happy clients and an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau to prove it. Rolling over a 401k, confused about Social Security, maybe you're afraid of running out of money. Learn how to use and enjoy and protect your hard-earned money. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement, and today's topic is rounding out the 4 pillars to a perfect retirement plan with pillar number 4, facilitate, which is something we are really good at here at Tony Walker Financial. So before I bring on our special guests, let's begin with all of the items we might be called upon to facilitate the changes that will come our clients' way, and here's just a short list of them. First, change in employment, which could result from a layoff, a buyout, or any other retirement issue that might come along. The next is change in health, which could be a change in health resulting in you needing to retire or being already in retirement, and a change in health which has to deal with a lot of financial issues that come along with that. The third change is a change in housing. We see this all of the time with people retired and needing to downsize or move to follow grandkids around, and it's a huge adjustment and one that requires our facilitation. Fourth, change in spouse, which could either be through a divorce, a spouse passing away, or someone who is single and decides to remarry. Next up, change in expenses. That's right, folks. When you get into retirement, the expenses can change drastically, and you're going to need a retirement planning specialist who can help facilitate how to get you money to meet those changes. Next up, change in family members. And boy, this happens a lot. An example would be someone who's retired and maybe has to take over a grandchild's care. And of course, this could be a huge change in their lifestyle as a result. Up next, change in insurance, whether it's needing a Medicare supplement or needing health insurance prior to that time when a Medicare supplement might check in. Here's a good one, change in lifestyle. In fact, one of the biggest things we have a good laugh over that. In fact, Gina Tutwiler had this little sign made up we put on our desk that says this: "Behind every retired man is a woman wishing he would go back to work." What we mean by that is when someone decides to retire, the things they might do, whether it's hobbies or trying to stay busy, is a huge issue and sometimes something people haven't thought about. And finally, as evidenced by this recent article, stating that Social Security will no longer be sending paper checks to its recipients. But that's right, folks, because of changes in technology, lots of different things going on for our saver clients. Which is why today we're going to go back and tackle change number 1 and how we at Tony Walker Financial facilitate the movement of money from various 401k plans or other sources of savings or brokerage accounts from existing custodians over to the custodians of money that we represent at Tony Walker Financial. So here in the studio to help us talk about the facilitation of new business written by Tony Walker Financial, I have to my left Juanita Jackson, who is in charge of our new business with Schwab, and of course Mr. Craig Davis, who is actually in charge of a lot of the rollovers of the 401k plans from existing custodians over to Tony Walker Financial. And through the magic of Zoom in our Bowling Green office, the person in charge of our annuity new business, Miss JJ Jennifer Jaggers. Good morning, JJ and Juanita and Craig. So the reason I've got you all on today is, again, we want to focus on this transition and the facilitation required when somebody comes to us and they give us the go-ahead and say, I want to do business with you all. How do we get this money from my current custodian over to us? And a lot of times we get Trey involved and he kind of reviews the plan, but immediately let's assume it's going to go to Schwab first. Before we do anything, let's take a 401k, for instance, because we got a lot of people with buyouts out there. So Craig, you get involved, and let's talk about the new business process, the first step we have to do in terms of the rollover. And if Juanita, if you want to jump into in terms of the order of things, feel free to.
Yeah, that first call for me, I reach out, just check their schedule, when they have availability for a 15-minute conference call. Sometimes we can just get it all accomplished in the first call. Sometimes we find out paperwork's necessary, sometimes multiple pieces of paperwork, and so it can get a little bit more cumbersome, and we schedule out how we need to approach all those things.
And then sometimes companies don't even need to know where need an account number, but a lot of times we call these companies, we just can't tell them to send a check payable to Schwab or whatever. What happens in those instances, Juanita, and when we know somebody's moving over, let's stay with the 401k because that's a little easier to dissect right now. Where do you come in and when?
So the first thing that happens when that new business comes over, we're evaluating the types of accounts, the custodians they're working with, and assigning the tasks so that we can pick up and call. Usually we know in advance which custodians are going to require an account number and which ones aren't. Of course, we're also dealing with complex transactions with transfers as well. We're looking at everything and listening. And then Craig will usually step in and reach out to the client to kind of explain to them what's going to happen, see when they're available, whether or not we need an account number, and what the timeline's going to be.
Okay, now JJ, and we're going to go into a deep dive on this, folks, so hang tight. But so JJ, in its simplest form, Craig's done the rollover call. Juanita's got the Schwab account set up. The check comes in. Where do you come in with the annuities in that example? We might have that lovely split IRA that we talk about, but where do you come in terms of the timing of moving that money over to our annuities?
So anytime the money is going to Charles Schwab first, I have to wait for that rollover that you discussed earlier to arrive there. And then Juanita, Craig, will give me the okay to sweep those funds out of the Charles Schwab account for the annuity. Annuities are still a little bit old school in their method of transferring the funds. So it does go by a regular check. So there is a little bit of lag time with the mail. We can expect about a 2-week time for transfer for it to get from the Schwab account to that said annuity.
We talked earlier, Juanita, about the changes in technology. It is kind of weird because we work with Schwab so much, and we hate to dog annuity companies, insurance companies. I've worked with them for years. I love insurance companies. But yeah, speak to the technology change, just what Jennifer brought up in terms of how quickly we get money to Schwab versus the antiquated way sometimes we have to get money to the insurance companies for the annuities.
Well, the truth is, custodians with rollovers also are sending checks. However, we can do full ACAT transfers coming electronically through some custodians, and so those are very quick. Honestly, it's a bit of a mixed bag with who's sending a check and who's sending electronic transfers, but it can certainly delay the process. And in the worst case scenario, if a check just cannot be tracked or is missing at times, we're working hard to determine where that is and to get it quickly deposited. So a lot of things can happen. Technology is increasing daily. I would be surprised long term if they continue this mailing the paper check and we don't go to more seeing those ACH transfers.
Yeah, there'll be people walk in the office. They'll either, especially in the Louisville office, we have it in Bowling Green too, but in the Louisville office, we do a lot of rollovers. So all of a sudden, people will walk in and go, hey, I got this check. And they kind of have a feeling of like anxiousness, don't they? I mean, that check could be $600,000, $800,000, and it's been left on their doorstep and they rush over here with it. Speak to that, Craig. I know I was in a meeting the other day and a gentleman drove 60 miles to bring that check over. So why did he get a paper check on that rollover, and why did he have to bring it to us?
Typically, the government needs to know where those funds are, right? On a rollover, we'll hear that they are going to get a 1099. It's not a taxable event, but it's reportable. And so the government's tracking where the funds are and what kind of funds these are. So the paper check also comes with a check stub that will list out. These are pre-tax funds, these are Roth funds, these are after-tax funds. So the check stub still in a lot of these cases does seem to be really important. But certainly they come in with a rollover check. We can bring it up for the Schwab department. We just deposit it electronically. Within hours, it's in the account. Within a matter of days, it's available. And so it's a pretty quick process once the check arrives here.
And JJ, we don't have that capability, though, with insurance companies do. Yeah, so we get a check, because sometimes checks do come to the insurance companies. Again, there is no electronic way to get that to the insurance companies, correct?
No, unfortunately not. The process, it could mirror the Charles Schwab process a little bit when it comes to a rollover. Craig is still involved. He would request that check either be sent to the custodian, the new insurance carrier, or the client. And a lot of times that he can speak to that better, but a lot of times that is preferred by their current custodian. So they will only allow it to go certain ways, I think, sometimes. So we will still get a check in office that's going directly to annuity, or sometimes they'll mail it directly to the annuity company, but it does have to physically be mailed to them. So if we receive it in office, we would send it in on the client's behalf. And then every once in a while, I think Craig can, depending on the custodian, can get that sent directly to the new insurance carrier, but it does have to physically go.
And I think what we're trying to say here, folks, is there's a lot involved when you decide to move money over. And not that we don't take responsibility. We do the best we can, but there are a lot of things out of our control when we're trying to get this money transferred over. You touched on something earlier, the ACAT transfer. Now, that process is pretty easy. Where would an ACAT transfer come into play, Juanita, and how quickly we can move that money over? Can you describe that situation?
Those are usually coming from IRAs, from custodians, depending on what the holdings are in the account. We're immediately assessing those holdings, determining if they can transfer and whether or not the client wants to transfer those in kind, or we can liquidate. At that point, once we submit that transfer, it can happen within the week, and those funds are available very quickly into the account. So transfers from IRAs are a little bit different, and also depending on what type of holdings are in the accounts. We're listening to the client. We're ensuring that we're bringing it over the way they want to, and we can get them over fairly quickly, I would say, within a week's time on the ACAT.
And in our time remaining, again, we're not trying to dog our competitors at all, but I've often said that it's a whole lot easier for insurance companies, brokerage firms, big wirehouses to accept your money, and it seems to be hard sometimes to get it back from them. We run into that a lot. JJ, speak to the time length involved, especially with annuities. I know we're working with a gentleman now, and he's tried to be very patient, and without going into much detail, but what is the problem sometimes when we're trying to get this money moved from people's existing custodians over to us?
The most common problem I've probably run into, of course, we have to physically send a transfer request. They have to accept that transfer request. A lot of times the funds have to be liquidated before they'll release them, which requires a conference call with typically Craig and the client to liquidate those funds. Then they require us to send a new transfer request now that the funds are liquidated. So it can be somewhat of a 2-3 step process depending upon what their requirements are to let those funds go.
And even the gentleman, and I understood his frustration. He was like, I just didn't realize it would take that long. Now, we've tried to deal with this. If you would, Aaron, put this up full screen. This is called our onboarding process sheet. And as best we've done, we've kind of got a timeline of things. So in general, Juanita, back to the split IRA. Now, we're talking about moving over, transferring money, because we have multiple transfers. Sometimes we'll have a rollover, a transfer. We might have 4 or 5 accounts moving over. What would be a good rule of thumb to tell somebody from start to finish how long this process is going to take?
It really is a case by case. However, you can expect if there are annuities involved, I would say we're 30 days getting everything wrapped up for sure. Certainly if we encounter any issues or problems, it can take a little longer. You're going to see some funds, of course, they're usually initiated to Schwab. We're getting them there first, and then they're going out to annuity. But I would say if they want to see the entire thing wrapped up, and Jennifer could speak a little more clearly on this, I would say 30 days is a closer timeline.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I would say with the annuity, by the time the annuity is approved, the transfer of funds is requested. I would say probably 30 days is a good estimate on issue. If you include our delivery process, I would say a client can probably expect about a 6-week process for everything to be complete and everything to be reviewed again and everything being said and done.
Well, folks, we're about out of time. I'm going to have to wind it down. Thank you so much for all you do for the new business department at Tony Walker Financial, and appreciate all your work. Folks, we'll be right back.
Tired of the roller coaster ride of the stock market? Let Tony Walker show you how to smooth out the ride with your money. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started.
The individuals in this interview are uncompensated clients at the time of filming. Their opinions expressed were provided to Worry Free Productions for use as an advertisement by Tony Walker Financial. Please refer to Form CRS and Form ADV Part 2B disclosure brochure for information regarding the advisory services offered by Tony Walker Financial.
Our client spotlight today shines brightly on Simeon and Debbie Ambergy. We always like to start off. Tell us a little bit about what you did for a living. We'll start with you, Debbie.
I've always worked like in clerical or secretary and, that type of work, and currently still do some of that. So it's
kind of working part-time.
Yes.
And Simeon?
For the past 20 years, I was working with Larno Harris, and he is a 5-time Grammy Award, 11 Dove Award winning gospel artist, just probably one of the best Christian vocalists around. That transitioned me to seeking more production work, and especially like I started doing a lot of YouTube, and it really helped me to get into the technical aspects of music production and things.
What in the world prompted you to contact Tony Walker Financial? Debbie, do you remember much about that first contact?
We were just praying about what to do with our finances. And I just kept catching your program on the air, and I was just so impressed about how you use scripture. And I kept telling Simeon about it. That was the first encounter, yeah.
So I started watching too, and it was like, yeah, we need to do that.
And since that time, you've been with us several years now. How would you, Simeon, explain the experience here, and particularly working with the staff and the details that go into your plan?
Well, and Debbie will agree with me. It's just there's peace. There's peace and confidence. So you walk in the door, and you just instantly feel a sense of this is where we're supposed to be.
Well, we appreciate you all so much and appreciate your business.
Thanks for having us, Tony.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Looking for an advisor you can trust? Schedule your free phone call with Tony at TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call 1-877-499-9255.
Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today. Our Live Well, Die Broke moment comes to us from Nancy Ritter, who in the past was featured on this show when she proudly displayed on the mantel of her home one of our coveted Tony Walker bobbleheads. But now, Nancy has outdone herself on vacation, and look what the grandkids decided to bring along. That's right, folks, a hard copy of my children's book, The Adventures of Tony Baloney and Cookie. So Nancy, thank you for taking along Tony Baloney and Cookie to your vacation. And oh, by the way, if you'd like to find out more about the origins of Tony Baloney and Cookie, it is for real, folks, by the way. In fact, we created a website which you can view at TonyBaloney.com and actually see a pic of me and my dog Cookie back in the 60s, and you can actually watch a cartoon we created as well as order the book. And yes, while this book has nothing to do with money, it has a lot to do with having some fun with those young kids and grandkids. So I hope you enjoy it. As we conclude today's show, we got about 8 minutes or so, and really important stuff what I'm going to share with you folks. So I know many of you are busy. You may be listening to this radio show, and it's kind of in the background. If at all possible, try to take a quick note of this and do your best you can to listen closely. This is really important, especially for those of you who are retired, retiring soon, or especially up in the Louisville area, we're running into a lot of people that are forced to consider a buyout from their current employer. So we're going to get into that a little bit. Now, by the way, if you have missed prior episodes, or you're saying, Tony, I got to cut out of here, man, I can't listen to this radio show, you can go to our website at TonyWalkerFinancial.com and scroll down, and all of the past episodes are located on that homepage, or you can go into the media and find it, or you can go to what's called SoundCloud.com. Is that right, Aaron? Aaron's over here. Yeah, SoundCloud.com. But anyway, as we talk about today's show, and as we kind of round out the show on this idea of us being able to facilitate the many needs of savers in retirement at Tony Walker Financial, I realize that what sets us apart from the rest of the financial herd, and I mean this, and I all due respect from the rest of the financial advisors out there who are trying to do the same thing we're doing, which is retirement planning, is our proprietary written game plan software. This essentially, folks, is something that what I like to call sheds light on what your options are. And many of you come to me, I'm going to share a phone call I just had the other day. Many of you come to me and you want help planning your retirement, and maybe you're already with other advisors, and I ask you why you're coming in, and you go, because I need a plan. So whether it's listening to the radio show, watching my TV show, or maybe you're just realizing that you are trying to enter this thing called retirement without a plan, a written plan, that is, not just somebody saying you're going to be okay. That is not a plan. Or as we're going to see in a minute, a gentleman was told he's going to have millions of dollars one day. That's not a plan. That has nothing to do with a plan, as we're about to find out. But if you don't have that written game plan in retirement, especially if your personality is that of a saver, you will start to worry. So I want to take some time and go over our 5-step process and explain to you why this written game plan is a must to being worry-free. Well, first of all, when you meet with somebody like me, again, I've done this for over 40 years, folks, the first thing we're going to do is clarify your vision of what you want to do. For instance, had 2 different employees from a company here in Louisville that is offering a buyout. Both of these employees were in their early 50s. Both of these people did not know whether to take the buyout or not. And it was interesting through my questioning, and again, I've just done this a long time, after about 15 minutes, I was able to help both of them figure out whether to take the buyout, and both of them had different opinions and thoughts on what they wanted to do and what financially they could do. So I convinced one of them to take it. Guess what? The same employer, this employee, the other employee I was talking to, I said to not take it. And I could confidently say that because I've just done this planning stuff so long. So that's part of what we do when I say clarify your vision. If you're looking to retire early, or maybe you're already thinking about retiring and again, you don't have a plan, I'm going to help you clarify what is it you're really going to do in retirement and how you're going to pull this off. The next step of our process is something we call basically the assessment. Now, this is where I'm going to take that information I received from you. I'm going to look at your tax returns, all your information, all your 401k stuff, all that stuff, okay? Aligned with your goals and concerns and objectives for retirement. We're going to put that together. Now, I do that personally. Now, I have other fiduciaries that have the capability to do this, but I figure if my clients, they're going to want me to do it because of my experience. And again, the unique part of our operation is I'm training the other advisors. They could pick up where I left off if something happened to me. But for now, as long as I can do this, I'm going to do it. Then that's turned over to our income planning department, where then we will present our findings in the assessment. If you want to move forward, I know earlier in the show we had on some of the staff, that's where you commit to the process. That's your third step of the process. You go, yep, ready to move forward. Let's get this money over to Tony Walker Financial and to the companies you represent. Obviously, we do all of that. You don't have to do any of the heavy lifting. The fourth step, okay, this is the actual implementation. How are we going to move all the money? How are we going to set up everything? How much money you're going to draw out? When you're going to draw it out? That's where we're to help. And again, we're really, really good at putting all that together. And then finally, and I think it's just as important, our fifth step is what's called monitor your progress, where each year we're going to do what's called an income planning audit. Again, you can't do an audit if you don't have a game plan. So probably nobody's auditing anything you've got, folks, because there's no game plan. Going over investment statements and doing calculations for retirement is not a game plan. That's just what ifs and, hope for the best kind of thinking. So those are the 5 steps we do. Now, why is that game plan so important? Many of you, again, who listen to this show, watch the TV show, are starting to understand how important this game plan is. Just got a call the other day. Gentleman called in. He's been with an advisor that he said he was happy with. He said, man, we've made a lot of money. It's growing, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, what's the problem? He said, well, number one, I'm only 53. I've got a few years till retirement, but I feel I need a plan. And they keep telling me, you don't need a plan. You're going to have millions of dollars. And he's like, that doesn't tell me anything. And secondly, here's the other problem. You may be running into this with other advisory firms or banks or whatever. He said, Tony, every time I go into this place, he goes once a year for a review, I've had a different advisor the last 3 years. So what we have to do is go back and look at everything, review everything, and then talk about the same stuff, how much my money's growing. So what is the problem with all this? Well, there's not a problem with this, I guess, if you just, hope the money keeps growing. But folks, let me tell you something. This is the warning shot over the bow for those of you who are taking way too much risk with your money and who do not need a game plan, especially, listen, if you're close to retirement or retired. I witnessed what happened in 2008. Now, are we going to have another 50% downturn in the market? Who knows? Nobody knows that. But the problem is you are resting on your laurels. You are allowing people to keep you in the market, and yeah, the market's done great. But if you get closer to retirement or you're retired, and if this market tanks, if you've gone into retirement without a game plan that's safe, simple, easy to understand, something that makes sure you don't run out of money, obviously that's something we affectionately call, do the mailbox money. If you don't have some mailbox money on the back end of that plan, you're going to worry about money. So here is my suggestion. If you're retired, retiring soon, maybe you're one of those folks that's been offered a buyout, or let's say you've just accepted a buyout, and obviously if you're on the younger side, you're not going to be able to roll that 401k over until the severance ends. But if you're sitting there with a 401k that needs to be handled, if you want a game plan wrapped around that, if you want some safe and secure investments that you can count on in retirement, why don't you give us an opportunity to talk? And we've made this so easy. We call this the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call where you and I will talk. That's right. Tony Walker, the owner of the company, will talk to you personally to see if we can help. And if we can, then you and I are going to meet in person to lay out and go through these 5 steps and see if our assessment and written game plan is what you're looking for. And best of all, this is all free. We only get paid if we manage your money. So there's no cost to go through the assessment and get this free game plan for those who qualify. So find out now if you qualify for this free service. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or call us anytime at 877-499-9255. Well, that's all the time we have today, but you remember, between now and next week, if all else fails, you be worry-free and you make it a good one.